So, this is your governess. She scowls when you are in pain and you're running a race. She doesn't want you to go any faster. So, we're going to see if we can find a way to get around this. When you do go as fast as you want to go, this is you. This is really, really fast. This is the current world marathon record. And that guy is 36, which is awesome. He said it last year. So we're going to come along and find out that this is a mile race. Notice how each lap gets slower until the last one. But why is the last one faster? If you're in so much pain, how can you get that extra edge and blow into the finish? So there's a guy named Hill, 1922. He said, well, maybe the brain's involved in that. And then a guy named Noakes, 75 years later, wrote a huge book talking about, yeah, Hill was right. And it's like 6 pounds. So your brain basically wants to make sure that you don't die, because then it'll die too. So it puts some things in place that will keep you from dying. And it doesn't want you to bonk. Bonking is kind of painful if you're an athlete or you're a cyclist. It should be a familiar term. But your brain really does not want to get you to a point where you're like this guy. This is not too pretty. This could have been several reasons: dehydration, muscle cramping. But there's a thing that keeps you from getting that far usually. It's called the central governor. And it can fail. This is 1984. Google for this woman's name, Gabriella. She took 6 minutes to go around the track on her last lap and collapsed about 5 times. Her central governor failed her. And that's actually pretty rare, which is a good thing. This is a lot of data that supports the central governor theory. And if you like graphs, you should be very happy right now. But we can get it a little bit simpler than this. And essentially what it says is that if you have inputs coming into your brain that say, we're working really hard and it kind of hurts, and your brain says, well, I think this is okay, I don't think I'm going to die, let's keep going. Eventually you're going to get to the point where your brain says, well, maybe we should slow down because maybe we might do some damage. But if you can keep going, at that end you're going to have enough to do that final sprint. And that's the key. So, being able to get there means that you can have a performance that breaks through. So essentially, you don't want to die, but your brain can be taught that you're not going to die at slightly higher levels of discomfort. So essentially, you can train your brain to say, I'm not ready yet. Now, this is the next generation of writing. This is new stuff. The Run book came out this year. This is a guy that basically said, here is exactly how to train yourself to manipulate your central governor. When it works, you get a performance like this. This is the women's marathon world record time. 5 minutes and 10 seconds per mile, by the way. So that's something that you want to do. Now, when you're training, how do we apply all this? First things first, start with the web, start with books. There's tons of forums online, people talking about how to train, and they're great resources because they're live. And of course, all the simple, normal training advice. Eat real food, eat enough. You can't eat as much as you want, unfortunately, but you do need to eat enough to support your training. And you need to be easy on your body. So this is a great technique to be able to squeeze a little bit more out of your joints. You can get more mileage and it's not quite as much impact. So I think it actually works pretty well. But the other things that you need to do is you need to suffer in your training. And it kind of sucks, but it's true. If you suffer in your training, when the race comes, your brain is like, oh, I've been there. Okay, we're not going to die, let's keep going. And if it works, you can end up like this. This is me. Kind of pixelated, but this is me setting my half marathon PR. And I'm actually in a lot of discomfort right here. But I know I'm going to do it, so I'm smiling. So that's good. The nutshell is, if your brain thinks that you're going to be okay, you can succeed. If it's a new and unfamiliar discomfort, it's going to shut you down. So just no pain, no gain. Sorry.
John, same as you. Very good. Nice to meet you. I'm Steven. Yeah. Looking forward to your presentation.
Okay, I'm going to talk about something called WebGL, and it's basically, well, it's short for Web Graphics Library. And it's this thing, it's still in development. There's a thing called the Kronos Group, and they're making up a specification for it. So as an end user, you really can't see this yet. But it's basically non-crappy 3D animation for your web browser. And it allows you access to the power of your video card. So if you've seen 3D animation on the web, odds are it's probably not really using the full potential of your video card. And you want to say, hey, I've seen 3D in my web browser. And you're going to say probably Flash. Flash, I think, is like the #1 cause of crashing for Firefox. So basically all the Firefox developers are trying to get rid of it. So it's something called OpenGL, and OpenGL is this 3D library. So WebGL is a stripped down OpenGL, and it'll work on cell phones. There's actually Nokia made a prototype of WebGL working on a cell phone. So this full 3D program that runs on a web browser, runs on the cell phone. And yeah, Firefox, it'll probably be in Firefox 4.0 coming out at the end of October. And because of DirectX, Microsoft wants to push DirectX and not OpenGL. So it'll probably never be on Internet Explorer. And how do you actually use it? Well, how do you actually make a program in it? This is a really high-level overview. So you got to learn JavaScript and learn about the DOM and learn about basically making websites. And so what happens in making a WebGL program is you really have two programs. One of them is running on the motherboard, and the other one's running on the video card. So these things, they sort of run at the same time. It's kind of like a client-server thing. So the first program that runs on the motherboard, it takes whatever model that your designer gives you, and you can see from my slides, I'm not a designer, and you basically get a list of points from your model. And then you write another program. And this other program runs on your video card, and it does all this heavy lifting. It takes all those points, it creates lines, and it sets up lighting, it changes. So the video card will take something like this, do a bunch of matrix calculations on it, and change it to the other one. And that would just drag down the CPU. And the last step is to send that data from your CPU to your GPU. And then, say you want animation, you just keep firing off your CPU, and you get your GPU to keep updating your stream. So how does this actually change your browser? The best example that I could find was search on YouTube for WebGL Dancing Planets. And it's actually this educational video where there's like a solar system, and there's planets flying around, and it's interesting to watch. And now a bunch of people from Google actually ported Quake 2, and I think it was just Quake 2, and somebody else did Quake 3. But basically it runs in the web browser completely in JavaScript. And the best benefit of this is that you don't have to download and install anything. So say you're in a classroom, you would just tell a bunch of kids, go to this address, and the 3D program would pop right up on the screen. It could be full screen. And you have this nice, smooth 3D program. And a lot of you might be saying, 3D in the web browser, so what? Does that really matter that much? The first 3D video game came out in 1981. So the web browser probably should have had a good API for 3D for a while now. So just stepping back a little bit, the CPU on the motherboard, it's kind of like a 4 or 6 lane highway, like a really long highway. So it's good for certain types of problems, with the cars being data, and they get through it at a certain rate and a certain speed. But the GPU is kind of like a 1 mile inner city highway that's 450 lanes wide. So it's good for other kinds of problems. You don't want to have a 450 lane highway across the country. So there's a lot of problems that fits into this running parallel really well, and some of them are the following. So you could, in the future, using this concept, you could have real-time video editing in your web browser. So you can go to a web page and it would smoothly be able to edit video. But WebGL is just for 3D. So there's been talk about there's another thing called OpenCL that lets you really access your video card. And there are a lot of people talking, and they're hoping they can kind of make it an OpenCL for the web browser. And just covering some local stuff. I wouldn't really say Cielo is trying to perfect it, but they're definitely taking it to another level. And Roadrunner is a pioneer of using these CPU-GPU combinations. And then there's another company doing drug discovery heavily using GPUs. And last but not least, I'm personally working on basically a clone of Google Earth written in JavaScript. It's all open source. Right now it's about 10,000 lines of code, and it really doesn't show anything yet. But anyway, if you're interested in it, there's a way out there.